Yeshua for coming. Okay, the title today of the Shir Be'ezus Hashem is going to be discussing the halachic consequences of a resurrected individual, Mesim Shechayu, cases where we have bona fide a case where somebody passed away and they were somehow resurrected. And what does that mean? Are they the same person, a different person? And what does it have to do with this week's parsha number 1? So that's the source number 1. This week's parsha coming up, Parsha Yisro, and the Gemara in Shabbos, Masechta Shabbos, Daf Pei Ches Amud Beis, discussing various agados of Matan Torah, says as follows. For Rabbi Shua ben Levi, says Rabbi Shua ben Levi, this is source number 1 where it's bracketed off. Kol dibur v'dibur shiyatzan pi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, each and every dibur that emanated from the mouth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yatzasa nishmasun shel Yisrael, the soul of the Jewish people departed them. Shneimer, as the pasuk says in Shir Shirim, nafshi yatsa b'dabroi, our souls went out by the utterance of Hashem. So, Ume'ach Hashem edibu harishon, the Gemara continues, once the first utterance was uttered by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yatzasa nishmasan, so the Klal Yisrael were no longer there. So Dibra Sheni Hey Chibla, how did they get the second Dibra? They're no longer Klal Yisrael. They have all been expired. Simply from the simple reading of the Gemara. So how did they get the next Dibur? Says the Gemara, Hayrid Tal, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought down the dew, Sha'asid Lahachya Yispai Mesim, which he's going to use in the future, Meher B'Yamenu, to bring back all the Mesim. V'Hichya Yisam, and he revived Klal Yisrael. Shenema, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, Geshem Nedavois Tanef Elakim, a like bountiful rain, HaKadosh Baruch Hu rained upon us, brought upon us. Nachalascha V'Nila Ata Kainanta, our heritage was worn out, so to speak, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu established us firmly. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought us back. The Gemara here is clearly saying that by Matan Torah we all heard the first Dibur from the Shechina itself, and it all caused all of Klal Yisrael to lose their neshamas, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu revived us with this tal, l'hachiyas b'yis hamesim. This is what it has to do. We're going to tie it into this week's parsha, Parsha Yisro, where we're going to get the Aseres HaDibros, and as we see, so we all died at Matan Torah. Okay, we're all familiar as well with the stories. There's two stories in Sefer Malachim. One of Eliyahu in the end in Malachim Aleph, right, where Eliyahu went ahead and he was revived the son of the Tzarfatis, the Isha Tzarfatis. He went ahead and he revived her after the son had died. And a similar story happened in the beginning of Malachim Beis, where Elisha went ahead and revived the Ben Shunamis. So we're not going to recap. I didn't bring down those psukim here. We're familiar with those stories. There's another story which goes a little quicker in Malachim and Malachim Beis, Parak Yud Gimel, where shortly after Elisha Hanavi died, they were burying somebody else, and then there was an attack, and the cook had to drop the corpse they were burying, and that corpse came in contact with Elisha's corpse, and all of a sudden that corpse also became alive just by touching Elisha's bones. Okay, I'm just showing you the different stories throughout Tanakh as well, that we have this phenomenon that people came back through the work of a Navi. For those who are learning Daf Yomi, there's actually Gemara last week's Daf Yomi and Daf Yomi and Beis. The story there was talking about the relationship between Rebbe and Antoninus. Antoninus was the leader of the day, and Rebbe was the leader of the Yidden at the day, and they had a very unique relationship. And Antoninus would go, and he had a secret tunnel built between his palace where he lived and Rebbe's house. And they would go and they would have conversations every day. And he made an upmach, he made an agreement with the Rebbe that no one's allowed to know that we have this agreement, no one's allowed to know I come, and he had these guards every day who would stand at the edges of both ends of the tunnel, and every day when they would complete their job, he would get rid of those guards, and there should be no witnesses around that ever saw Antoninus go visit Rebbe. So once the Gemara recounts that one day Antoninus came to visit Rebbe, and Rab Chanina was there, and Antoninus got upset and said, we made a deal. No one's allowed to be. No one's allowed to know that I come. And Rebbe said, "Don't worry. This is not a person. He's really a malach." And meaning he's trying to tell Antoninus, "This is my prized student who's on a very high level. You don't have to be concerned that anything that goes on between us will ever see the light of day. It'll still remain a secret." And Antoninus said, "Okay." He tells Rebbe Chanina, "Go to the entrance where I just came in and tell the guard, give him a message." Or he told him to tell the guard something, or wake him up or bring him here, something like that. So Chanina says, "Oh, okay." And he goes and he sees that the guard was killed already. Antoninus killed the guard when he came to visit Rebbe. So he says, "What do I do now? If I don't bring the guards, I'm defying the word of Antoninus." So he was Mechayim Mesim. He brings the guard and he shows Antoninus, "Okay, here's the guard." Antoninus realizes that he's not dealing with a regular person over here. Chanina obviously is on a very high madrega, and Antoninus utters the words Yadana, I realize now, Zuti, even the small ones amongst you, meaning compared to Rebbe, meaning even Rebbe's Talmidim, the Isbechu Machayim Esim, even the smaller rabbis among you have the ability to be Machayim Esim. That's quite an utterance by Antonius Agai, but we just from this Gemara we see that again the idea that the Tanoim were on such a high madrega that it wasn't necessarily considered out of their league to be Machayim Esim. Similarly, the Gemara is going to be, I think, in next week's Daf Yomi on Chafam and Beis and Avodah Zarah, the Brisa of Pinchas ben Yair, which is the whole prerequisite for Mesilas Yesharim, right? Torah Mevila de Zehiras, Zehiras Mevila de Zrizos, etc. Climb the ladder, the last steps of the ladder of Ruach HaKodesh Mevila de Tchias HaMesim. Mesilas Yesharim explains it is that someone who gets all the way to the end of the ladder, a lifetime, if not of more, of work, will be able to be Machayim Mesim. So this is a part of our I guess Emunah or our belief in the Koyach of Torah, Koyach of Tzadikim, they have this power. Okay, so we all believe it, and now that's just a introduction to discussing now what the halacha is going to come out of it, and hopefully at the end, even though nowadays we might not be exposed to tzaddikim on this level that are able to be Machayim Mesim, but it does have some practical nafkaminas as well, which we'll get to at the end. So let's start now with the famous Gemara on source number 2. It's coming up the month to Purim. So the famous Gemara that happened on Purim many years ago in times of the Gemara. The Gemara first introduces the halacha that Rava tells us, Machayev inish lebesum b'puraya, a person is obligated to become intoxicated on Purim, ad lo yada bein araham lebarach Mordechai. That's a great halacha. Every boy from the age of 6 or 7 is very well versed in this halacha, and that's for a different shir. What was the story the Gemara says? Rabba v'Rab Zera. Rabba and Rab Zera avdu sudas Purim b'hadi hadadi. They made a sudas Purim together. Ifsum, and they got drunk. Come Rabba shachted Rab Zera. Rabba went and got up in his drunken stupor and was shachat. He shechted Rab Zera. The next day, boy Rachami, Rabba Davin, so seemingly a whole night went by and Rav Zera was dead. Va'achye, Rabba revived Rav Zera the next day, brought him back to life. L'shana, the next day, the next year, Amar Le, so Rabba invites Rav Zera again. Neisi Marav Navid Sudas Purim Mahadi Adadi. Rabba calls back his good friend Rav Zera and says, let's do a Sudas Purim again. We had such a great time last year. You had such a good night's sleep. Rav Zera. So what does Rav Zera tell Rabba? Amar Le, Loi b'chol shaita v'shaita misracha shnisa. Miracles don't happen every year, every day. So I cannot rely on the fact that a miracle will happen again. And therefore, Rav Zera politely refuses Rabba's invitation. Okay, that's the Gemara, and this is a great discussion for the halachas of getting drunk on Purim. Maybe this year or a different time we can discuss those halachas. But for now, we're going to discuss a different aspect of this story. Rav Zera was dead. Let's just say, for argument's sake, he was dead for 6 hours. He was dead the night. What happened to Rav Zera's wife at that time? What happened to Rav Zera's assets? A person who dies, the Yerusha kicks in. Even if the children, the inheritors of the person, don't split up the money yet, but it automatically goes into what's called the Tfusas Habayis. It goes into an enterprise of an estate that now is not the person's anymore. So now Rav Zera shows back up. Is his wife still his wife? Are they still married? Does he still own his car and his house and whatever his assets were? Does he still have all these things? If he owed people money, like where does he fall in? Is he the same Rav Zera? Is he a different Rav Zera? Rav Zera was a Kohen. Is he still a Kohen now? All these questions have to be dealt with. What is his status right now? So let's go to source number 3, and that's the Be'er Heitiv. That's in the bottom of the Shulchan Aruch. I didn't quote the Shulchan Aruch here, but the Shulchan Aruch says the halacha here that an Eishes Ish, a married woman, she's married, and in Kedushin Toifsim. If a person will go over to a woman who's already married, she's halachically married, go to a Sprinzel and say, Sprinzi, here's a ring, you're married to me. It's a joke. It doesn't work. Because since she's halachically married, a woman can only be married to one man, and therefore, if a person tries to be Toifis Kedushin, tries to do Kedushin with her, it doesn't work. It's invalid. So the halacha, the Be'er Heitiv brings down the following interesting halachas here. That's where it's bracketed off. The first case he discusses, which we'll mention briefly now, but we're not going to discuss so much today, is Eishes Eliyahu Hanavi. What's the halachic status of the wife of Eliyahu Hanavi? Quick recap. Eliyahu Hanavi, towards the end of his life, he doesn't have a regular death. He gets into a fiery chariot, goes up for a ride, and he's never seen from again in that exact form. We have all different other Gemaras of Eliyahu Hanavi coming back, but he kind of just ascends to Shemayim without a regular death. So what happened to his wife? We know there's 2 ways for a woman who's married to become mutter. Either she has to get a get, she gets a bill of divorce, then she's now permitted to remarry, or her husband has to die. If her husband dies, she's permitted to get remarried. Eliyahu Hanavi didn't die. He just went upstairs. He got an express route without death. So what happened to Eliyahu Hanavi's wife? And furthermore, the Gemara recounts Rabbi Shua ben Levi had a whole discussion with the Malach HaMaves, and he tricked him, and he jumped into Gan Eden without the Malach HaMaves killing him. Okay, we're not going to get into those details now, but it's a similar idea where he kind of bypassed the death route and went a different route. So are they allowed to get married or not? So he says, the Ber Heitev he's quoting the Trumas Hadeshen, says, Mutaras linase, he allows them to get remarried, he makes up a halacha. Just mentioned briefly, he says, because the Torah says when you're married to a man, Eishes Re'eu, but not Eishes Mach. These people became Malachim, so now, even though it's not death, but they're not human beings anymore, and therefore the wives are permitted. Says the Ber Heitev, why are we writing this halacha? V'nafkamina l'dairis, it has an implication, halachic ramifications for future generations, im yiske echad k'may, meaning it's not completely theoretical. Don't think this question was only theoretical in times of Eliyahu Hanavi or Rabbi Shua ben Levi. If someone is zeicha, even in our generation, to this miraculous event, we have to know what the halachic status of their wife is, and according to the Ber Heitev, their wife would now be permitted. Okay, that's he's quoting Darkei Moshe b'shem Maharai, Darkei Moshe, name of Maharai, which is the Trumas Hadeshen. Okay, the next case after the period, the third line down. Imesa isha achas, if a woman dies tachas baila while she's still married, misa v'adayis. So you have a nice couple, the woman passes away and she's for sure dead. V'shuv chisa ayadei navi, then she's revived, she's brought back to life, resurrected. Through a prophet. Kimai Eliyahu leben Tzarfasis, like Eliyahu did to the son of the woman who was from Tzarfas. Ve'Elisha leben Shunamis, and Elisha did to the son of the Isha Shunamis. So again, he's saying a case here is an important distinction of a woman who dies, and he's bringing a raya from a case of these children who died and they were revived. But his question is, if a woman died, and then she's revived, so the connection of the husband to her, the relationship did not evaporate, didn't go away. Now she gets revived, she's not allowed to marry somebody else unless she will get divorced properly, meaning she's still halachically married to her first husband. So again, you have Reuven and Leah are married. Leah dies for sure. The Navi comes on your door, he knocks on your door, and he says, anybody dead in the house I can revive today? The guy says, yeah, my wife, she's, and the Navi revives the wife gets up, they're now completely married, the same as was before. She could be dead for a minute, an hour, a day, doesn't make a difference. Seemingly over here, she is still married. V'yesh sa'ad, I have a proof to this. May uvda de eshes Rab Chanina ben Chakinoi, from the wife of the story of the wife of Rav Chanina ben Chakinoi, Ksubas Taf Samach Beis Am Beis V'Duk Knes HaGedolah. He's quoting the Sefer Knes HaGedolah. So the Ber Heitev here paskins, again, a woman who dies and she's revived through a Navi. We don't have a precedent for this in the Sefer HaNaviim. Again, the Sefer HaNaviim discussed case of children that died. So he says, I do have a proof to it though, from a case of a Gemara in Ksubas, which we'll get to in a moment, of the wife of Rav Chanina ben Chakinoi, that they are still married. So what's that story? So that's source number 4. There's a mistake in the header of source number 4. It says Ksubas Taf Peiches Am Beis. It's supposed to be Samach Beis Am Beis. I made a typo. Okay, so the Gemara there says as follows. I'll just paraphrase the story to move along quickly. Rabbi Chanina ben Chakinoi was by the chasna of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And as the chasna is coming to an end, he's packing up his suitcase, he's getting ready to go back to yeshiva. Shimon Bar Yochai says, please wait a week. I want to finish Sheva Brachas and come with you back to yeshiva. I got married already. Sheva Brachas are over in a week. Wait for me, we'll travel together. But Chanina ben Chakinoi does not listen to Shimon Bar Yochai. He says, I don't have time to wait a week for you to finish Sheva Brachas, come back to yeshiva. I got to go now. He goes to yeshiva, and as it was in the olden days, he stays in yeshiva for 12 years. He comes back 12 years later, and his hometown where his wife and children were living, they had changed the street. Something happened, and he couldn't figure out how to get back to his house. So everything was messed up. They built new highways, new bridges, whatever it was. He couldn't figure out where he was supposed to go. So he figured he'll go to the banks of the river, he'll sit by the river, and try to meet some locals and figure out where his house is. As he's by the river banks, he hears some young girls there drawing water, and they're calling out to one of the girls, and they say, Bas Chakinoi, the daughter of Chakinoi, which was Rab Chanina's father. So they're saying the daughter of Chakinoi, which is either, now the Mefarshim discuss, either this was his sister or really was his daughter, but she's just being called by the grandfather's name because the grandfather raised her because her father was in yeshiva. Mali kulasech v'tei nazal, go fill up your jug of water and come with us. So he says, this girl is either my daughter or somehow related to me, so let me go follow her. So 3 lines to the bottom, he goes and follows her. So he says, Azal Basra, I'm reading 2 lines from the bottom now, Have Yasiva Devisu, his wife was sitting, as he got close, he sees his wife sitting there, Kanaha like Kimcha, she's like sifting, she's sieving through the flour, she's filtering the flour. Dol Eine, she lifts her eyes, Chazite, she sees her husband there, Sava Liba, her heart flutters, she has a heart attack, I don't know what you call it. Uparach rucha, she passes away because of the shock. She goes into shock by seeing her husband after 12 years. Amar Lafanas, Rabbi Chanina Chakina says, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, Aniya zu zes chara, this impoverished woman, Nebuch, she spent the last 12 years waiting for her husband to come back from yeshiva. I finally come back, and this is the reward she gets. She passes away. Boy rachame Allah v'chaya, so he beseeches mercy on her, and she comes back to life. So that's the Gemara over here. The wife of Chanina bar Chakinoi comes back from yeshiva after 12 years. He revives her. The Gemara doesn't say that they had to get remarried. Seemingly, they were still husband and wife. So it says the Berhetiv, he's calling the Knesset HaGedolah. Again, you see the Chayr from here, a proof that a woman who dies, she comes back alive, they're still completely married, no new Kedushin is necessary. It's not Rak Sala proof. The Gemara doesn't say they didn't need to get remarried, but just seemingly from the way the Gemara quotes the story, it seems to imply that they did not do another Kedushin. Just for intellectual honesty, not all Mefarshim learned the Gemara as I translated it. Some Mefarshim learned the Gemara is that she just kind of fainted. She passed out. The Gemara doesn't say she died. It used the words parcha rucha. Her spirit left her. Some Mefarshim learned the Gemara that she just, she passed out. She went, what do you call it? She fainted, right? And then he davened. He didn't have to do CPR. He just davened, and that was enough to wake her up. They have to bring the smelling salts. But some Mefarshim do learn the Gemara that she actually did die. But it's interesting because the Gemara does not use the word mace over here. The Gemara just uses the word parcha rucha. Okay, now the Birki.
What would the point of the Gemara be if she just fainted?
Well, that he just is able to revive her just by davening, perhaps. That's also a nace, or the fact that, that's a good question. Maybe it's utterly moving from the story as well. Yeah, Moshe.
Yeah, and exactly about being shocked. Like, how can a person exactly die from being shocked?
That's a good question. We have to ask our local doctors how that works, how that goes, and how that works exactly. But we'll accept that as a fact. That could happen.
What about proof from Har Sinai when we died?
Well, that was the first Gemara we start with.
Go back.
We're going to get to our Gemara again. The Gemara as we start with, and we'll get back to Har Sinai again shortly. Let's first go through a couple more Ma'amakaimis. In the Chida, in the Sefer Birkei Yosef, that's source number 5. He really opens up this sugya, this question, and broadens it a lot. And in the second big paragraph there, it says on the right column, it says V'yesh l'stapek. Let's bring up this discussion, like we said before. The wife of Reb Zera, when Reb Zera was killed, and that was clear that he was dead, do we say, Vadei Paki Kedusha V'hutur L'shok, her Kedushin for sure was, went away, and now she's permitted. And therefore, when Reb Zera woke up the next morning, they had to get remarried. And then, or halfway down the paragraph, after the period, he says, Dilma, or perhaps you'll say that, no, the only time a woman becomes permitted when her husband dies is Dafka Kasher Mace, Vinishar Mace, when the husband dies and he remains dead. The Chidah writes, the Birkei Yosef writes, Kishaloi Nikbar, if the husband was never buried, V'chai, and he was brought back alive, Aydei Navi, a chassid, through a prophet or a chassid, Igloi Milsa, we see from here the Isa Misa La Isa Misa Kamais called, and it's not a real death. It might have looked to us human beings, might look like a death, but since the Navi was able to do it, perhaps you can argue and say that's not considered a death. So that's his suffix. How do we view it? So on top of the left column, he says, at face value, he wants to bring a raya from a Yerushalmi. He says, Lufum Riyata, it says in the beginning of that paragraph on top of the left, he brings a raya from Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi discusses the following case. A husband is traveling, and this was, the Gemara discussed many of these type of cases, and he was afraid that, it's dangerous to travel, and he's afraid he might not make it back, or he might get lost, so he gives his wife a get al tanai. He says, if I don't come back within 12 months, this get should be valid. And if I come back, then we'll still be married. So just this way, it's a protective. So in case the husband gets lost at sea, we don't know what happens. It shouldn't be an aguna. She should always have this insurance policy in place that she can get remarried after 1 year in case the husband doesn't come back. If the husband would come back after 12 months, comes back 14 months later, they're not married. And if they want to get remarried, that's up to the woman if she wants to get remarried to him or not. Okay, so the Gemara there has a discussion of a certain halachic nuance, if he didn't say the nusach properly, whether or not it's valid or not. I don't want to get stuck on that nuance of it. But the Gemara says, let's say the husband died within that period. Is she allowed to get remarried or not? So the Gemara in the Yerushalmi quotes a machlokes, and it says, Rabbi Yossi says she can't get remarried. Why? This is a couple, 4 or 5 lines down the left column over there. It says, Ani Omer Nasu Loi Nisim V'Choya. A miracle might happen to him, and he might come back to life. So we can't say that within 12 months, just because the husband died, she's for sure permitted to get remarried, because who knows what might happen. A Navi might trip over him and wake him up. and then he'll come back home, and they'll still be married within 12 months. So, says the Yerushalmi, we cannot say for sure that she should be permitted. Now, says the Chidah, the Birkei Yosef says, even though our Gemara, the Bavli, doesn't quote this possibility, doesn't bring this in the range of possibility, we have to be concerned that a Navi is going to bump into this dead fellow and revive him. Nonetheless, he says, Nira, this is about 10 lines down, after the period over there, it says, Nira, Tahagam de Bishamay Shemeis, Loi Chashinan Klal Lamaisa Nisim Sheyichya, even though we're not concerned necessarily for Maisa Nisim Sheyichya, the Zel Shchicha Klal, and I just skip a couple more lines now, but halfway down where it says, Mikol Makayim, Lamadnu Ma'Yerushalmi, nonetheless, we learned a principle from this Yerushalmi. Dim Achar Shemeis, after someone dies, Nasu Nisim V'chai, he has a miracle and he gets revived, resurrected. Akati Agide Be'ishta, you see though, that the wife is still connected to him, meaning they're still married. Let me just speak this out. So even though our Gemara is not concerned in the Bavli and the Halacha Lamaisas, we're not concerned that a Navi is going to find this guy and resuscitate him or resurrect him, and he's going to come back home. But the principle of the matter is that if that would happen, they're still married. Again, the Bavli just says we don't have to be concerned that someone's going to resurrect him. And therefore, she's immediately mutter to go ahead and get remarried once she gets valid witnesses, or she knows for sure that the husband's dead. So we don't have to be concerned. But let's say Taka, the husband would get resurrected and would now walk into the door. We don't have any raya from the Bavli that the Bavli would say they're not married. So therefore, it says to the Birkei Yosef, it seems to me that even if someone, even according to us, the Halacha L'maisa, if we know for sure that someone is resurrected and he came back to life from the dead, they are still married and they're still husband and wife. The zika, the connection between the husband and wife was not paka. So again, even though the riots from Yerushalmi that we don't paskin like, but in the lumdus behind it is that they are still connected in marriage, and that says the Chidah is Chula Halacha, and therefore the Chidah paskins, seemingly he says, the from Riyata, he says, this is what I would assume, this is the correct pshat in the Yerushalmi, and he says at the end, the last 4 or 5 lines, he says, even though you could question on my thinking, he says, Ani amarti b'chavzi, I'm saying this quick, off the cuff, this is what I think, this is the right halacha, that they're still married, and the raya is from this Yerushalmi. Now, in source number 6, I brought down part of the Yerushalmi there that the Yechidah was quoting. I'm not going to speak it out right now, you can look it up, but just to let you know, there are mefarshim who are matcha the raya. They push off the raya from the Yerushalmi of the Chidah, and they say the reason why the Yerushalmi says maybe Rabbi Yossi is concerned Nasla Nisa v'chaya is because since he made a t'nai, if I don't come back within 12 months, this get should be chal. So if he comes back, so you can't say she's divorced because he's here, even though he was revived, resuscitated, or resurrected. But Lamaisa, he made a stipulation, and that stipulation wasn't fulfilled because he now walked in the door. So there are those that say that the raya from Yerushalmi is not foolproof because all we see from here is that if he would come back, not necessarily that they're still married, but you can't say that the get is in chab, meaning it's kind of you're kind of stuck in between because he died, now he's back. Is he the same person? Not the same person. Well, but he did make a condition. The way he spoke was that if I don't walk through this door, he is physically walking through this door right now. He's back within 12 months, then the get shouldn't be chal. Maybe they shouldn't be married because the death itself was paka the kedushin, but maybe not. Okay, I'm just bringing the point that there are those mefarshim who learn this Yerushalmi is not a proof that even the Bavli would agree that there is still a connection between the husband and wife, because maybe you can argue that since he made a tanai here, since he made a stipulation, perhaps that stipulation still is around, it's still kayim because the Maisa he came back before 12 months. Okay, so that's the Yechidah, how he paskins, based on the Yerushalmi, that they are still married. Comes along the Ben Yehoyada, in source number 7, the Ben Ishchai. He's commenting on that Gemara of Rabbah and Rab Zera. We said before that Rabbah was shachted Rab Zera. And he doesn't quote the Chidah in the Sefer Birkei Yosef, but he quotes the Chidah in one of his 70 other Sfarim. The Chidah wrote over 70 Sfarim, and the Chidah, and when you write over 70 Sfarim, there's bound to be some things that might be repeated from one Sefer to the other. So the Chidah in the Sefer on Masechtas Megillah called Pesach Inayim, so there he has a similar question: what's going to be the halacha with the status of the wife of Rab Zera? And then about just the first 3-4 lines are the same, but then about 4 lines on the top of the paragraph in source number 7, after the period, the Ben Yehoyada writes as follows. V'ana avda, and I, the servant, meaning he's being humble to the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai, that's the Ben Yoda, is being humble to the Chida. Hevesi raya lazeh, I want to bring a raya to the Birkei Yosef's halacha min Yisrael, from Klal Yisrael. Sheparcha nishmasim matan Torah, like we started with before. Klal Yisrael all lost their soul by matan Torah. V'hoyer HaKadosh Baruch Hu tal shetachia v'hichi Yisam, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought down the dew of Tchias HaMeisim, like we said, and revived them. Ukeniska b'medrash. V'im kol zeh v'yihutzchu l'kadosh n'shayim b'chadash. We don't find that all Klal Yisrael on the march home from Har Sinai had all pull out rings and be mekadosh their wife again.
Even more than that.
One second. We're going to get to that pasuk in a minute. But at this point, he's saying the raya of Ben Yoda is that we see that Klal Yisrael all died at Matan Torah. They all went back home afterwards. We don't find anywhere that they had to do a new kedushin. He says that should be a raya to halacha of the chidah, that no new kedushin is necessary. I'm pushing off for a reason because we'll get to that soon. Hillel is raising a good point. The next raya, he says, that's raya number one, that the marriage is still valid.
There's no difference if Hashem revives a person versus a Navi?
Seemingly, yeah. Because it's interesting, I was thinking about that, because the Gemara in Tainus tells us that there are three keys which HaKadosh Baruch Hu holds on to. One of them is the key of Tchias HaMeisim, right? The Gemara in Tainus, right? The key of Tchias HaMeisim. So, but nonetheless, we start off with that the Nevi'im had that key, they had access, and we saw in the Gemara, the Tanaim had access, the Amoraim had access to it, so I'm not exactly sure. It seemed like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if he gives out that key to whoever Zeicha to get it, then it should be the same thing. The second raya the Ben Yoda brings is the 3 lines from the bottom after the period. It says, "V'oid havesi raya of another raya to this halacha. We mashenem our parak Yud Nida." The Gemara at the end of Masechtas Nida, Einam Abeis, brings different questions that a nation asked B'shua ben Chanina, and the Gemara there says, "Sheshalu B'shua ben Chanina ben Ashunamis imitame." They asked Yeshua ben Chanina, the Ben Ashnamis, that's the person that Elisha, the child that Elisha revived, resuscitated, resurrected, is he susceptible to give off tumah or not? V'heishiv lahem, and Yeshua ben Chanina responded, Meis metame, v'ein chay metame, v'uadin halcha. He says, he told him that only a meis is metame, that child is not dead, the child's alive, and therefore the child's not going to give off tumah, and therefore it says the Ben Yoda, the same thing over here, will say that the person's not really dead, and therefore they are still married. Again, so the second raya is from the case where they asked Rabbi Shua ben Chanina, is the Ben Ashunamis, is that child metame or not? And the way the Ben Yoda is quoting the Gemara, they said that only a mace is metame, not a chayis. That seems to imply that even once the Navi resurrected the child, it seems like L'mafreya, there was never a death here, and therefore that should be a raya. The problem with this raya is, if you look up that Gemara, the way Rashi learns the Gemara over there, is that Rashi learns that the question was only on after he's resurrected. Meaning, but they understood that for sure when the child was dead, for sure there was tumah, and there's rayas to this, for sure there was tumah, meaning, again, the Isha Shunamis has a child, the child dies in the attic. She goes to run to find Elisha. So, for argument's sake, for a couple of hours, the child's in that room. So there's tumas oil there. The child's dead. Now that the child is revived, they were asking Yeshua Chanina, is he still a dead person walking? So now wherever he goes, he's transmitting tumas oil, or if he touches things, whatever, or not. So he says no. Once he's back alive, he's back alive. But Rashi learns the Gemara there clearly that for the 6 hours, whatever it was, that this child was dead, he was dead. There was full-fledged tumah. So that would seem to imply, if you learn like Rashi, perhaps you can argue on this raya of the Ben Yoda and say no. For the time a woman is dead, she's dead, and there's no marriage. There's no connection between the husband and wife. If she comes back alive, she's a new person now, and maybe they will have to have a new marriage. I'm just saying it's not the raya again also is not foolproof, because the Gemara there was only discussing after the person was resuscitated, after this child was resuscitated, what's their status? We don't say they're a dead man walking; they're a live man walking right now, and therefore there's no tumah. So this woman is a live woman walking now, so she's a new woman. Not necessarily the same woman as she was before. Because if you learn the Gemara there, his question was that even while they're dead, maybe there's no tumah, because since we see... Why were they asking this question? Well, that was the Goyish question. The Goyim asked that question. So I'm not sure how much we have to work on that Havamina, meaning it was the... Okay. And the Gemara prefaces that question was in the category of a boor's question. Okay. Anyway, fine. Now, so we're back and forth now. We have the Chida and the Ben Ish Chai both learning seemingly that there is a continued relationship even after a person was resurrected. They're still married. And other Paiskim are arguing and saying there's no proof, there's no foolproof raya that their relationship is continuing. Now, there's a fascinating Kli Chemda. Kli Chemda is ala Torah.
So
that this is so...
And he quotes here from a kuntras called Oyvar Oirach, a couple lines down. The kuntras Oyvar Oirach was written by Rabbi Elio David Rabinowitz Tumim. That was the father-in-law of Rav Kook, the first chief rabbi of Palestine. And he has a lot of chashuv svarim of Elio David Rabinowitz Tumim. And there, he brings the following discussion. I'll just speak it out outside now. He says, the Gemara in Brachis has a discussion that Rabbi Zera was sick. He recuperated, and Rabbi Avo made a suda in honor of Rabbi Zera's recovery from his illness. It comes time to benching. It comes time to break the bread and begin the meal by tzeiah, to give out the challah, give out the bread. And Rabbi Avo is machaber Rabbi Zera to break the bread. And Rabbi Zera says, "No, you're the Baal Bayis. You should do it." Okay, so the Rishonim ask. He brings a Rashba who says, what was Rabbi Avo thinking? Why did Rabbi Avo want to honor Rabbi Zera? The Gemara there is discussing the halacha that the Baal Bayis should always be the one to break the bread, because since it's his house, he'll be the most generous to give out the bread. A guest never knows if he should get out big pieces, small pieces, but the Baal Bayis will give out big pieces to be generous. So the Rashba asks, why was Rabbi Avo giving Rabbi Zera this honor? Rabbi Zera was a guest. So the Rashba answers, because since the Suda was the whole thing was done as in Rabbi Zera's honor for his recovery, he was the guest of honor, so to speak, as if he's the host of the party, because the whole dinner was in honor of him. Therefore, he gave Rabbi Zera the honor of breaking the bread. That's what the Rashba says. Ask the Aderes, ask Rabbi Eliezer Dov Rabinowitz Tumim, I don't understand. The Gemara tells Rabbi Zera was a Kayin. So of course Rabbi Avo was going to be Mechaber Rabbi Zera to give out the bread. He's a Kayin v'kidashta. We have to honor the Kayin. And one of the things is, besides not just benching, but he gets the schus to give out to make the bracha first. We might see everybody. That's his kasha. So he answers, you know what? This story must have taken place after Rabbi Zera was killed by Rabbah. And therefore, once Rabbi Zera was killed, he was a Kain the first time around. But the second time around, he's not a Kain anymore. He got a new lease on life. He's happy to be alive, but he's no longer a Kain. He's Ice Kain, says the Aderes. Once he's Ice Kain, so therefore, there's no reason why Rav Avo has to be machabed him because he's a Kain. The only reason he has to be machabed him to make him make the bracha is because dinner was done in his honor. That's what the Aderes wanted to suggest. So you see from this, the Aderes is understanding that when a person dies and he's resuscitated or resurrected, he is a whole new person. Now again, he's discussing the halacha of kahuna, but the chayra we could extract from here, it should be the same thing. His marriage should not be the same. He's a whole new person. He's a whole new bria. As a panach chadash is ba'alakan. However, the Kli Chemda takes great issue with this psak. He says, I don't know where the Aderes gets this idea from. About 2/3 of the way down after the period there, it says, V'loi Eida ma ka'amar mar. I don't know what the great master is saying. That a kol kain hu kain machmashu ben kain. You're a kain because you're born a kain. It says just because a person died and got revived or resuscitated or resurrected doesn't take away from the fact that he's a kain. He's still considered Yolud Isha. He's still considered a human being, and therefore he's always remains a kain. So they're arguing in this aspect, but it's also with chayra, it would shed light on this discussion as well, perhaps whether or not someone who is resurrected keeps the kahunaship, and the chayra whether or not they could keep their wife in the same relationship. The next page, source number 9, although it says 10, it's a mistake. It should be 9. I skipped 9. I don't know what happened to it. It disappeared. I forgot. I made a mistake. But here we go. The Avnei Nezer is discussing a long tshuva about a certain case that came up in Aguna Shaila. Came up, and at the end of the tshuva, what's nageh to us, he quotes from his son, the Shemi Shmuel. The Shemi Shmuel told him that an amana, a case, this wasn't the exact case that he was actually discussing, but it became, the conversation evolved into this. Amana shabayla chazar chai k'uvda the kam rabba b'shachta l'Reb. This story. So he said, the Shemi Shmuel told his father, the Avnei Nezer, again the Avnei Nezer was the Sachachav Rebbe, his son, the successor of the Sachachav was the Shmuel, that was the farm Shemi Shmuel, we have him here on the shelf, and so he tells his father that the Kedushin's Chal, because he says, this is 4 or 5 lines from the top, Ki b'chol shah misas habal shumeis achshav matira. The Shemi Shmuel told his father, because every second the death is what's matering her, so once the death goes away, then she's now back married to him. Again, he's learning that the way, a woman is married, so there's only 2 ways that she can now become permissible. Either a get, or the husband dies. The Shemi Shmuel told his father, the way Misa, Lavomnus, and how Misa works is that because once a person dies, he's continuously dead, so that continuum of death is what's continuously being matir the woman to get remarried. Once you turn that off because you resuscitated the guy, so then she doesn't have that continued heter of death anymore. So now she's still married to her husband. He's learning that meaning the lumness of death permitting a woman to get remarried is not something it's not a one-time event. It's rather something that continuously runs. And therefore, if that for every reason stops because the Navi comes along and resuscitates the person, therefore Shem Shmuel told his father that the woman now should be still married to her husband.
So does that mean if the woman would get married while he was dead? So then once he gets revived, the kedusha is bottled.
That's a good question. I didn't ask that question because I don't know how to answer that. Okay. Meaning, what would happen? Right? The person discusses this question, or Florence asked us a similar question. Let's say a husband, his wife Leno dies, and he goes ahead. Let's say his wife dies, okay, and then he would go ahead and marry her sister. That's allowed after if a person while his wife is alive can't marry the sister. But once the first wife dies, the person is allowed to marry his wife's sister. So let's say he would marry his wife's sister, and then his wife would come back. First wife would come back. So now what? He's married. Who's he married to? Or a similar question. Florence says, I'm not answering this question. I don't know how to answer these questions. These are too complicated. But we're going to discuss halacha l'maisa in a minute. But that was a Shem Shmuel's proof. That was his lumnus to the Avnei Nezer. And Avnei Nezer says about 5 lines out, "V'neflasi." And I was astounded by my son's logic. He says, I think you're incorrect. The way a get works, he told his son, is that if a person tells his wife today, you are no longer my wife, here's your get, but tomorrow you'll be my wife, this get only works for one day, it doesn't work. Meaning, the get works, and they can't just, turn it on, turn it off. It's not an on and off switch. Today we're divorced, tomorrow we're married, today I'm dead, tomorrow I'm alive. It's an off switch. Once it's off, it's off. If you want to get remarried, you got to get remarried. He says, the gittin works like that, death works like that. Once it's off, it's off. If you want to reignite, you gotta start again. He says, listen to this raya he brings. This blew me away. It says, "V'guf achidish t'chol shas misas b'ayla matir." And that what you wanted to tell me that misa is a continuum, that it continues always being matir the woman. It's not true. Mavur hahepach. I'll prove to you you're wrong from a Ramah in Yeridei Siman Reish Samach Zayin Sif Samachei Vu B'Tur B'Shem Haramah. So I'm not familiar with Reish Samach Zayin Sif Samachei, so I went to look it up. What's it discussing over there? Discussing halacha of avodim, slaves. The halacha is that if the Adon dies and the slaves are gedolim, they get to go free. Okay, a person or the Yarshim actually inherit it. Okay, now you have a halacha like this. You have a ger, someone who's a convert, and he has no children. At least no children from when he converted. Okay, so the halacha is nichsei hager, a ger when he dies, his nechasim are hefker. Okay, so you have a ger, he owns avodim, and he dies. So if those avodim are gedolim, they're over the age of 13. So the second the adam dies, they get their freedom because since there's no yarshim, there's no one to inherit him. Therefore, they get their own freedom. Let's say, however, the halacha. Let's say the avodim at that time were ketanim; they were minors. So again, they were owned as slaves, and their owner was a convert, and he died. And now you have these 10-year-old kids who are slaves. What happens to them? So the halacha is. I wrote down the Shulchan Aruch over here. The halacha is ketanim ein lahem yad lizkos ba'asam. They don't have the right to get their own freedom. So they're like any other asset. So that the ger owned when he died. The halacha is nichsei hager hefker. I mean, this ger. When he died, he owns a Rolls Royce. You can go grab it. If he had no yarshim, first come, first serve. So these avodim ketanim as well. First come, first serve. Whoever gets them, gets them. Now, says the Ramah. If no one merited to get these children, these slaves who were minors, until they became adults, they're stuck. Because what happened? Again, they were owned as slaves by a ger. The ger died. They were 10 years old. They somehow were hiding for the last 3 years. So no one was zeich in them, but they couldn't get their freedom because at the time of death they were ketanim. Even though now they're gedolim, they're amas paskening, it's too late. They lost their chance to go free. Their only chance to go free was when the owner died. Because Shas Misa, says the Avnei Nezer, is not a continuum like the Shem Shmuel learned. Shas Misa is a one-time event. That's when their freedom was. At that point, they weren't halachically able to go free because they were ketanim, they were tied. Therefore, it says Avnei Nezer, you see from the halacha by avodim that death works as a singular event. That's the shas of freedom, so to speak. And if a person can't get that shas freedom because they were ketanim, so just because now they became kedanim, it's too late. They lost the opportunity. Says Avnei Nezer, so too by a woman or a husband that dies, or say a woman who dies. So the misa automatically right away is matir it. Let's say the husband dies, so this woman right away now is mutter to get remarried. If the husband comes back to life an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours later, doesn't make a difference. She's already a free woman, and she can go ahead and get remarried again. And there's rayas from Hilchas Havadim that you see that death is a singular event. Once it happens, she's scot-free. Okay. So now that's basically we're left now with the halacha machlokes between numerous poskim, whether or not how we view death and how we view the resuscitation, I should say after death, is that considered a person as a new being or not a new being? So what does that have to do with us in 2018? So like this, the Chuvas from Tzitz Eliezer and many other poskim as well, but I copied from him. The Tzitz Eliezer was the main posik for the Shari Tzedek Hospital in Eretz Yisrael, and he was asked the following shayla. This is roughly 30, 40 years ago. He was asked, and this is in source, it says 11, really it's source 10. In Ice Aleph, he brings down the question. The bottom line, the question is, someone who goes for an open heart transplant, a surgery, where they're going to take out his old heart, put in a new heart, and for a short time in between, they're going to hook him up with a machine that's going to artificially keep him alive. But really, he's not alive anymore. A person without a heart is dead. It's true they're keeping him alive with some type of fancy machinery that we're zeicha that nowadays we have, which is great. But halachically, is he viewed dead for when they took his heart out? Since when they take his heart out, he technically can't survive anymore. He's considered to be a treifa, or he's considered to be dead. Now the fact that they're keeping him alive, is that considered somehow, and they put a new heart in him? Meaning, even when they put the new heart in, they have to give him all his medications. And I didn't properly get all the medical facts down pat, but it's very possible that he won't accept a new heart, and his body will reject it, and that could be a tragic result. But the point is, he was asked, how do we view this person who went through a heart transplant? Is he considered to have been dead, and now he's resuscitated or resurrected, and he's a new person, or not? I mean, do we compare this case, the heart transplant, to all this discussion we had till now? And he goes back and forth. It's a lengthy tshuva, and in Ois Zayin, he quotes from a Chassam Sofer, which is going to go back to what I pushed off Hill before, about bringing back a raya from Matan Torah. And we're running out of time, but the Chassam Sofer is Chuvas, and he brings at the end over here from, he says, it's 1, 2, 3, about 6, 7 lines from the bottom of the left paragraph. He says, he first brings a Chassam Sofer, which I'm not going through right now, in Chuvas, which he says supports the idea that the person can still consider married. They didn't lose their original identity. And he says, the Chassam Sofer brings that Gemara, like we discussed before, that as man Torah they were considered mamish dead. To our discussion of a heart transplant, do not need a new kedushin. To HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe la'achar mikan, it says in Va'eschanan, Lech emor lehem shuvu lachem lo'lechem, go back to your tents. Shehutru ben Eshaysein, the Torah is giving a direct tzivoy, telling Klal Yisrael at this point, you're all permitted to your wives. Don't think. So where he's learning the Chassam Sofer, I'm just speaking it out, is that the Chassam Sofer is learning into the Pesukim that Lahedja, the Torah was telling us, after Matan Torah, even though there was a death experience, and there was a resurrection, the Torah is telling us Lahedja, Shuvu lachem lo'lechem, that everyone is now permitted to their wives, even though you would say, you can argue and say there's no Kedushin really ever, because beforehand, whether they were Yidden or weren't Yidden before Matan Torah, it's a whole discussion. But now that definitely we're given the mitzvah of Kedushin in its full sense, to get married with Edom, etc., that didn't exist beforehand as a mitzvah, so maybe you can argue and say they shouldn't be halachically married. The Chassam Sofer learns into the Pesukim. That's the next Marmakam as well. We ran out of time, but also the Chassam Sofer there reads into Pesukim as well, that the idea is that you would have thought that the marriage between Ish and Ishtar would have been negated by Matan Torah because they all died, and the halacha is, said the Chassam Sofer, and this way the Tzitz Eliezer paskins, that they are still considered married, and therefore Tzitz Eliezer, and I saw in the Alan Candle lent me the Sefer for the Dibar Tabam, it's a Talmud of Dov Feinstein Shlita, and he paskins there as well, in Chelik Beis, that halacha mais, if someone would go through an open heart surgery today, they should be gesund and well, and they do not have to worry about getting remarried to their wife. They're still married when they come back. They still own their estate. They don't lose their Ferrari. They don't lose their whatever else they might have had. And we should all live and be healthy. And Ashkayach everyone for coming.
You mentioned, but there's still going to be a difference between if a malach brings it back or a Yohu brings it back. If that